Thank you. Next, we have Lee Paulson.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for allowing me to speak. I'd like to talk to you about some concerns that I have. So, in late December 2017, an old developer, Millenium, enacted unauthorized bulldozing through acres of South Coast live oak riparian forest behind Creaking Horse Drive. So the residents retained an independent ecological report and found that the habitat strongly was dominated by sensitive coast live oaks. So, and that's our new Sierra Club maps. Our new Sierra Club also maps wildlife habitats throughout our city, and we do this using the best science. It's exciting to learn our communities is one of 36 biodiversity hotspots in the world. We have many rare ecosystems, coastal sage scrub, chaparral, southern coast live oak woodlands. And all right, so I've read the 2006 EIR for Millenium, which in my opinion is a travesty of minimizing inaccuracies and misdirection. Bonterra Soma Consultants' environmental data appears woefully outdated and poorly written. And so my question is, have outdated environmental recommendations contributed to bad practices on the Millenium project? And that's a question I'd like answered, and I'd like someone to explain, please. And here's why. Meanwhile, we're working on the general plan for the city. And the general plan's update project, they have a red line existing conditions habitat map, which is on page like 13 of the existing conditions report right here. And the interesting thing is that it doesn't show any coast live oak woodland anywhere in the recently damaged area. Nor does it show any of that coast live oak woodland distributed throughout the city, except one small area in the north. Instead, the habitat map incorrectly indicates walnut woodland, which is the yellow color. So Los Angeles County oak woodland maps along the state mapping data indicate that we have a dominant coast live oak woodland in this city. This is further verified using the CDFW ecosystem ID data. So walnut willow habitat is present in the city, but it's not dominant. So there's other omissions, but the thing that concerns me is that we have a paid consultant to say that there's no oak live woodlands anywhere else in the city except in this corner. And then we go out and find illegal bulldozing and found out that that's exactly what people have cut down. And so my concern is that the people that created this either look criminally negligent or incompetent. And that concerns me. It concerns me because if we're going to have a general plan that is accurate and serves the residents of the city, then we need to be able to trust the information that's being put out there. So there's other omissions, which is that there's no mentions of the many wetlands in the city, no report of the California gnatcatcher, least Bell's vireo or golden eagles, species our studies are finding an abundant distribution throughout the trails and urban wildlife. Steve Nelson, ESA subcontractor for Diet and Biotech, created the maps, and I understand he's an old friend of Diamond Bar, having served on the Planning Commission for 13 years. And so what we want to know were the indicators on the copy and maps obtained by Ground Truth Protocol, per the CDFW 2015 standards, and if not, why not? And how much was this consultant paid to produce the biological resource chapter written in the January 19th, 2016 report, precisely how many man-hours were used to produce the work for this map. And so what we know is that environmental consulting is an unregulated industry.
Mr. Paulson, I'm going to
we're
ask you to wrap
concerned
it
that
up.
the baselines are being lowered. So thank you very much.
Thank you. And Mr. Paulson, thank you for your comments. And just for our records, are you a resident of Diamond Bar?
Affirmative for the last 17 years.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Next, we have Robin Smith.
Good evening, Council. It's a privilege to speak, and as you know, I am a resident of Diamond Bar. I'm here tonight with very mixed feelings because I'm receiving troubling reports of damage that's being caused by the developer Millenium. But the interesting thing is I'm not just here to talk about that. I really wish I didn't have to talk about them. I'm here to talk about the value of our community and something that I treasure very much, which is our oak woodlands and our habitats here. I personally have an oak woodland and coastal scrub on my property, and that's how I got into this. So we have a growing youth group in the Sierra Club, and we are mapping the species here and trying to do a good job of it, and that's why we're noticing some inconsistencies. I'd like to say, just as a reference, smoking, tobacco smoking, let's think about this, has a long history in human culture, okay? You want to know how this is tied in, I'm going to tell you. Okay, I know Nancy's like, okay. So I'm just trying to draw this attention. We have a common thing that we take for granted, and we think it's a healthy thing. And believe it or not, back in the 30s, doctors recommended it for health purposes. Okay? Now we know better. And it took from 1950 to about 1990 for us to get regulations and full stop and turn around course correction and realize how dangerous it is. Well, it relates to environmental impact reports. Okay, I've read so far all the EIRs I've worked on in this city, and usually they're dated like 2003, 2006, and they are woefully, they're really incredible to read. They're not even accurate. And I understand that back in the day, we didn't have the science we have now, okay? This city deserves the best information available to it. We work hard at trying to hire the best consultants. And I'm here to just point that out. Having suffered damage on my property from a construction worker years ago before I knew anything. At $60,000 later, expense to me, now I know, okay? So these things that we miss in our environmental reports, I think need to be corrected. And one of them is our tree codes, okay? And I can definitely have a meeting with you and show you what I mean about that. And also point out that the mantra that I've heard in the planning department goes something like this. When it comes to an environmental impact, the notion of development decimating a wildlife habitat is usually thought of less than significant because the birds or animals will simply move and find another tree. Okay? This concept is equally damaging as a smoking concept because the truth is the birds, the resident birds, are monogamous and territorial. They die. That's what extinction does. So according to the planning department, we have no law or code to protect resident birds like the raptors and the gnatcatchers in our coastal scrub, like when we're driving through and making a trail or any other so-called improvement on private property. And we should have this updated. And these private residences that have sensitive environmental areas should not be cat-X'd. They should not be a categorical exemption because CEQA says the exception to that rule is if there is a special sensitive environmental area on that property, like my property. Okay, so here are the pictures of Millenium, just for reference. This is the before. The 1,000 oak trees were wiped out by what we call scorched earth grading. This is the after, okay? Scorched earth grading is when a team comes in and they just wipe out the earth in a very short amount of time to just get rid of it. And it causes all kinds of destruction. And this is one of the pictures, many pictures of the private property. By the way, Millenium legally only has the right for ingress, egress. They do not have a right to come in private property on the slope and do this. And I thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Ms. Smith. Next, we have Gu Win Wang.
Good evening, dear City Council, City Manager, and staff. Just for correction, my name is Yuen Wing, and I am a student at Diamond Bar High School. And I'm here to make some comments and ask some questions about Millenium and the development project. The parent company of Millenium was involved in a Chinese government corruption scandal. Huaqing Enterprises LLC was named and was the same company at that time managing Millenium. Council members have received state assembly campaign contributions from this Huaqing Enterprises and many associates, including City of Industry, and my sources will be attached. I understand that it is nearly impossible for the planning department staff to detect shady business practices or reputations of applicants. Yet, the public's inquiry about these emerging connections or patterns intensify public concerns as to what guardrails are in place to assure neighborhood integrity, especially one small parcel at a time, because over time, small parcels cumulatively impact the entire city's ecosystem. Diamond Bar taxpayers do not wish to foot litigation bills incurred by city decisions, which appear to be instigated by relationships with developers who have questionable business practices. So far, what is the financial burden legal problems with Millenium Development has incurred? Please provide this information in itemized costs. And furthermore, what will the city do to stop damages to private properties incurred by New Millenium? Thank you for your time, and please answer my questions in writing by February 24th, 2018, and a copy of my speech with my email and the sources will be emailed to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Diego Tamayo.
Thank you for the opportunity to present. So, dear Honorable City Manager, City Council, and staff, I am going to discuss a concern I have with the city's policy on oak woodlands at the current moment. As some of the people before us spoken, the Millennium Development has been utterly upsetting, and I have a lot to discuss due to this whole new issue that's arisen in the past month. One oak tree is considered its own ecosystem, a keystone species in fact. Thousands of species are supported by this single type of tree, and it's not just a single tree. The significance is these trees are all in an interconnected family, connected into one web of life. And when you tear one tree, it affects them all. It's a family, they're not single trees. The presence of our healthy oak woodlands here impacts our health and well-being, and it supports our stress relief and is important to the wetlands of the San Gabriel Valley, Los Angeles Basin, and Southern California throughout. As a concerned youth for ecology, I want an explicit explanation as to why the Millennium Tract 53430 project was not subject to the Los Angeles County Woodland Conservation Guide. I understand the RO was done in 2006, and there are many questions that have been brought up about inaccurate environment reports from the 2012 reports, but how come the city of Diamond Bar hasn't appeared to have initiated what is right for these oak woodlands? Aren't we a tree city, USA? The project about conservation planning of oak woodlands is posted on the LA County Planning website, and I have the link on here. I'll give you the paper at the end of the meeting so you can see for yourself. For the future general plan update as well that's coming, will the city adopt and implement the LA County Oak Woodland Conservation Guide 2014? And I also respectfully request Director Goodman to explain the development process for sensitive environmental projects. What happens first when an applicant contacts the city all the way through to the final environmental approval process? Nothing understandable is posted on the city website, frankly, and the planning development has no brochures. Why doesn't the city have an urban forester staff position? Will the city ever hire one? Urban foresters are trained to assure the best practice in landscape services and tree management. And I haven't seen very good treatment of our trees. I've rather seen neglect, and I am upset. And though I haven't lived here very long, I've become quickly aware of the flaws, and I want them to be improved and fixed. That's what I want for the better of our community, and I hope you will understand. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who wants to make a public comment? Come on down. Please give us your name and whether or not you live in Diamond Bar.
Yes, good evening, Mayor and the council members and the city staff. My name is Hofu Wu. I live on 22368 Kicking Horse. And I want to show you a picture, which happened to be the backyard of my property. And this was one of the fence that we erected a couple of years ago. But now, of the complaint that before, that after New Year's and after Christmas 2017, and that's the picture of our fences now has been destroyed by a contractor who's hired by the Millenium development. And this was something we didn't aware of. Suddenly, this was got removed, and we filed a complaint to the police department that they couldn't do anything. Further, this last week, my family were out of town and just come back today, and what we find is that the Millennium have put a fence on my property. I didn't even know that. Is it allowed for a developer to come in and do something on your property? That's something I would like to complain and then find out what was the power that the development company that can come in into my property and do all that, even though that's a creek by the county as an easement for the water protections. But that's not for the developer and company to come in and do this. And you can see that the woodland, the oak tree we have on my property, and I was told that the development company going to tear down or cut off another 40 to 50 of the oak tree. That's the protected species of the California oak, black oak in my property. And behind that is just a ditch there, and that's a creek. And you can see that they even put some sort of a yellow tape on my property. I don't know what was that meant. And I just took it this afternoon after I come back from my trip out of town. So here you can see the fences were all the way to my property, inside my property. Those are the oak tree I have. And then right down there is a creek. And I couldn't even get back to my backyard. And it's my property, but I couldn't get in at all because they fenced it off. And this is the property that my neighbor and I, we have. You can see there's a yellow tape all around here. And they claim they're going to do something about this one without our agreement or without approval. or without our understanding. So it's quite a astonishing surprise to us. And then I do really ask your council can help me to find out what's wrong with us and what can we do to protect our own property. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wu. Is there anyone else who wants to make a public comment this evening? Okay, seeing none, we'll close the public comments and bring it back to Mr. Fox for any responses to our speakers.
Mayor Lowe, I'd like to defer to the City Attorney David DeBerry.
Great, thank you. Mr. DeBerry?
Thank you, Mayor and members of the City Council. As far as the complaints about Millenium going upon private property and taking down oak trees and brush, while noting that Millenium did not perform this work in accordance with its mitigation requirements, ultimately it does have the right to clear that site to develop its homes. I know a lot of the commenters were concerned that the EIR that was done in 2006 was inadequate, but the reality is that we cannot reopen that EIR unless there's some significant change in the project. So they've had the right to develop their property in accordance with the EIR and in accordance with the mitigation measures, which we acknowledge they have violated, and we are taking care of those violations as we speak. With respect to the Kicking Horse Ridge property, we've looked at this issue before, and most recently, in a matter that's currently being litigated, the court looked at this issue and found that Millenium has an easement over those private properties, and they can go upon those private properties to develop and construct Alamo Heights Drive. So, at least preliminarily, the court has found on Millenium's behalf that they have the ability, and it could well be that the property owner, previous to the gentleman who spoke, gave that easement to Millenium, but his property is burdened by that easement, so they do have the right to go on his private property and develop the street.
Okay, thank you. Anything else? Are there any comments from the council? Councilmember Lyons?
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. DeBerry, the resident claimed that Millenium had put a fence around his property so that he couldn't get to all of it. Would that be covered under what you said?
Councilmember Lyons, it would be difficult to say. I'd have to know all the particular facts, but if that fence is a screening fence and it's within the easement area of Millenium, it's hard for me to judge how and where it might cut off other parts of his property, but if it's property that's within the easement area, they may have the right to do that. And it may actually be required of them. I don't really know the particulars on that.
So what would you advise him to do then if he wasn't sure? Who would he talk to?
He would need to speak to a lawyer himself.
Okay. I just want to make sure he had some kind of direction on that. Thank you.
Any other questions? Councilmember Lin?
So if Mr. Lowe's statement is correct, that his fence got destroyed, do you think that the Millenium has the obligation to rebuild the fence?
Councilmember Lynn, no, they wouldn't, because that fence is within an easement area. There's going to be a street someday. So that fence would have had to come down in any event, and it's probably in the post condition when the street is actually constructed, there probably won't be any room for a fence there. So as a property owner, once they provide an easement to Millenium, Millenium has the right to remove any improvements in order to build its facility.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, so Mr. Wu, hopefully you can take off on that information and work from what we're able to give you. All right, next we have item number 5, which is schedule of future events. Mr. Fox.